Welcome back to Wordy and Nerdy. I hope you are doing well. Time codes below if you want to skip around. Today, Wordy and Nerdy will talk about Avatar 2, complete spoilers. Avatar 2, The Way of Water, a movie that took 13 years to make and a movie that needs to be the third or fourth highest grossing movie of all time just to break even. From the director who made Titanic and Terminator 2 Judgment Day, and the 10th million director who said Marvel movies are not true cinema. This movie has to be good, right?
I'm honestly actually sort of impressed by their ability to pack so much nothing into 3.5 hours. Like, the movie is egregiously long, yet almost nothing happens in it. So very little happened. There were multiple occasions where I was like watching the screen and I'm just sitting here like, like, how much longer is this? Like, there are just extended scenes of nothing happening.
Yeah.
Very beautiful nothing happening, but nothing happening all the same. It's like there are scenes where they like swim through the water and they see the fish. And we watched it in 3D, and I honestly didn't even think it was that impressive in 3D. It was very pretty. There's no taking that away from it that it was a very pretty film, but like story-wise, it just ground to a halt for extended periods of time. I mean, it's like they would have like anytime the story approached any kind of theming or message, it just ground to a halt. It was like the villain was motivation of like a Saturday morning cartoon. Like, I must kill the My Little Ponies. It was just like, it was so underdeveloped. It was literally the same villain from the first movie.
Mm-hmm.
Like, you know how people made fun of J.J. Abrams for that somehow Palpatine is back nonsense with the Rise of Skywalker. And yes, that was stupid and deserved to be made fun of, but this is the same fucking thing. So I don't understand. I mean, like, oh my god, I spent the last 24 hours talking on my TikTok about it, and like a James Cameron fanboys in my comments section having all kinds of cope for like this movie. This movie was good. My favorite thing that they say is that they're like, you guys are giving this all kinds of hate, but you like Marvel movies. First of all, Marvel keeps getting all kinds of smoke for like and catching all kinds of strays for like no reason. Because like, who was saying anything about Marvel? Like, it's no better than a Marvel movie. You look, Marvel movies have thin plots too. Blah blah blah. And I'm like, I don't see how that's a defense, because it's like, yeah, sometimes Marvel movies do have thin plots. However, most Marvel movies I've seen have like better plots than this. Like, the only, like, somebody said, you know, if we were going to compare it to a Marvel film, we could compare it to like Eternals for the same reason, because they're both too goddamn long. And even Eternals, I think, has more going on in terms of story. Like this movie has so much nothing happening, and it's like, I actually give a fuck about the Marvel characters. And somebody's like, you only care about the Marvel characters because they were established in comic books, not because of the movies. I'm like, no, I mean, I do like comic books, but like, the movie versions of the characters are their own thing, and there's plenty of character development throughout the thing. Like, you don't have to like all Marvel movies, and I'm not saying they're all cinematic masterpieces, but there 100% is more character development over the last 20 years of Marvel films. And also, my whole thing is, if James Cameron, who loves the smell of his own farts, I mean, I've never met a man who was just so fucking up his own ass. Like it's just so fucking pretentious and insufferable. And he's one of those directors that's constantly complaining about how Marvel movies ruin cinema, and they're not high art, blah blah blah. Yeah. So I'm like, so he doesn't even want to be compared to a Marvel movie. So how is it a defense to say the plot isn't worse than a Marvel movie? Okay, is that the litmus test? Because don't y'all hate Marvel movies? So if you're going to say that, then you're admitting it's not a very good story. Like, I just don't understand. If you think Marvel movies are just popcorn schlock that has no meaning, then this is also popcorn schlock that has no meaning. And yet, there are like people comparing it to Marvel or Fast and Furious or Star Wars, and I'd rather watch any of those movies before this, because at least interesting things happen. Rise of Skywalker might be a fucking disaster, but at least there's lightsaber fights. There's nothing going on in this goddamn movie. It's just so long and boring. So it's like, what do you mean? Well, you can't criticize the plot because it's no worse than any other mindless blockbuster. Your whole appeal is supposed to be that you're not just another mindless blockbuster. So if you want to insist that you're so much more important than these other movies, then don't be mad when we judge you as such.
A couple things I would like to bring up. My friend, who has never watched the original Avatar movie, and it took him 3 days to watch this movie, because he said he had to stop so many times because he found it so boring.
It was so boring. Like, this movie was so boring. Like, I mean, I know that is such a played out complaint about like a bunch of movies. Like, oh, it's boring. But like, this movie was so boring.
Yep.
Like, there was so much nothing happening, and the few interesting questions that it did raise were never even addressed. Classic example is, so first of all, Jake and Natiri apparently just fucked a whole fucking lot after the first movie because they have like 4.5 kids, because they've got this Tarzan motherfucker, this white kid with dreads who pissed me the hell off, and he and he's there constantly with their other kids, and like Natiri complains about it once to Jake, and then it's never brought up again. And I guess we're supposed to admit that she doesn't like him that much. We're supposed to be getting kind of like a Catelyn Stark versus Jon Snow kind of vibe, I think.
Yeah.
Except that that's never explored and never goes beyond that one conversation, like many things in this movie. And so, like, she expresses some concern about him hanging out with their kids like once, and then it's never brought up again. So there's this kid named Spider, who apparently there's like an Avatar comic series that he's explained in. And there's like a novel that you have to. But I'm sorry, if your movie is 3.5 goddamn hours, and I still have to read comic books and novels to understand what the fuck is happening, you wrote a bad movie. Like, oh my god, I don't want a homework assignment to understand what the fuck is going on.
I cannot express how dumb this movie was. It was horrible. I cannot believe they brought back that sergeant.
And it's not even like he was a super compelling villain.
The sergeant villain is like if Marvel brought back the Thor: The Dark World 2 villain. Or just brought back the Black Widow villain, the random Russian mafia dude. He is nothing. He's a nothing of a villain. They don't even bother in 2 movies. They have not even bothered making me care about this general at all. He is so generic.
He's just a bad American government guy.
I want to destroy native people. I want to take over this world. Why? Because fuck it, I'm evil.
In this movie, he doesn't even want to take over the people. He's singularly focused on getting Jake Sully. He's just obsessed with killing Jake Sully.
Which I even think is more dumber than the first one.
Yeah, it is. I mean, it's like they're not even doing it for resources. He's literally just doing it because he's mad at Jake Sully. And I'm just like, what? Like, I don't even understand where they were trying to go with that, because it's like, so they bring the villain back from the last movie. So they brought him back by cloning him. So there's a clone of him. They cloned him into an avatar, and which first of all, how long have they had this avatar cloning technology? Because that seems like it would have come in handy several times. But they clone him into this avatar body, and then they make him watch this video where it's like, hey, you have all my memories, you're a clone of me, and you're gonna, like, be the bad guy or whatever. So then he just accepts this. However, there are several points at which the movie establishes this is not the same person, this is a different guy. Yeah. Because it's like, on the one hand, they're like, he wakes up and he's like immediately super hostile, and then they're like, whoa, calm down, and then they show him the video of himself, but it's his clone or whatever, and then they implant his memories, and they're like, hey, this is, who you're supposed to be, and your mission is to kill Jake Sully. And so then for the rest of the movie, he's like singularly focused on killing Jake Sully. But there's this weird scene where he comes across his own dead body in like the woods of Pandora, which I guess they never cleared it out or anything. And he comes across his own like skull or whatever, and he looks through his like view screen or whatever and sees his own death and sees that like Natiri shot him or whatever. And so then he's like, I guess, mad about it, but he already knows he got killed. But then I think one of his soldiers is like, hey, do you want to like bring the remains back to like give it a proper burial or whatever? And instead he just crushes the skull. And so to me that seemed to say like, okay, I'm rejecting like my old self or whatever, or like that's not me, I can be my own person, like I don't have to be this exact person. Because he literally crushes the skull of the original person. And so I'm like, okay, so is this going to be about him like becoming, he might still be the villain, but he like has his own motivations and stuff. But no, for most of the movie, he's still just him. And he keeps having lines where he's like, that's not me, I'm someone else. Like they talk like the spider is supposed to be his kid, or the original guy's kid. And so he's like, that's not my kid, he's not, and even the other army person's like, he's not really your son, you're a clone, whatever. He doesn't see himself as this kid's father, but then he's mad at Jake and he's like, I took you under my wing and you betrayed me. And I'm like, why do you feel personally about that if you have already established that you do not feel like you are the same as the original Colonel? Like, you feel like you are your own person, even though you have the Colonel's memories and shit. So why are you saying, like, he goes from telling Spider, I am not your dad, but I have his memories, to you betrayed me, Jake. And it's like, no, he betrayed another version of you that is dead now. And you, like, what was the point of the narrative stuff and the visual stuff communicating that he wants to be seen as an individual, but then also he's basically the same person. Like,
he does the same plot. He doesn't change. He does what the military dude would have done if he was the same person.
It's literally the same person. They don't rewrite the character. I'm like, you had 13 years for this, and you didn't. First of all, you couldn't come up with a different villain or a different conflict. And this conflict is even less interesting than the first one because they're just like, he just wants to kill Jake, and I guess the entire U.S. government also wants to kill Jake because I don't know.
I don't. Why is Jake so important? Isn't the whole point of you guys being there is to take over that planet for resources?
Yeah, take over Pandora. Which Jake and his family literally leave Pandora in like the first 5 minutes of the film.
Yeah,
because he's like, because the army attacks, and then they're like, well, first of all, I guess the army had been attacking for a while because the army attacks, and then it goes 1 year later, and I'm like, well, what was the point of showing us that? And then, but 1 year later, nothing has really changed. It's just the army occasionally comes in and attacks. And then the Na'vi fight them off. And it seems like the Na'vi have been fighting them off just fine for years. But then, so then the military says, like, they always manage to fight us off. We have to, like, get in there and, like, kill Jake or whatever, because I guess he's their leader and he's telling them about our tech. And I'm just like, first of all, aren't the Na'vi, like a really advanced society? Yeah. And, like, I mean, if they've been kicking your ass for, like, 16 years, and I'm only saying about 16 because his kid, he's got kids, like I said, he's got 4 kids, and his oldest kid is about 16, I think. I mean, they don't never say it, but he looks like he's about 16. And so I'm just like, what? Like, it's been years. At this point, they know how to fight you. It doesn't matter if Jake's there or not. I don't think there's something gonna not fight you if Jake's not there. Like, I was just like, and Jake, again, wasn't there after the first 15 minutes. He's like, we gotta leave. And Natiri's like, no, I don't want to leave. I want to protect our people. And he's like, no, we have to leave because the people will die if they come and attack us. So let's go to a different group of Na'vi, the water Na'vis or whatever, and she doesn't want to go, but then she goes, and then, like...
also, I thought that was a complete asshole thing for him just to do. Like, oh, by tribe I've been living with, you're still at war, I'm just gonna leave now.
He just leaves, and he's like, it's to protect... He literally makes another guy become the chief, and then he leaves, and I'm like, okay, first of all, wasn't the whole thing of saving Pandora, wasn't that like your whole motivation in the last movie? Like, what? Why are you're just up and leaving? And I figured surely they would go back, but they don't, because the end of the movie is so crazy too, because it's like the only person who dies, the only person who matters who dies in this movie is his son. And I would even just say he matters is kind of a stretch, because it's like his oldest son.
Can we talk about his son? His son has nothing.
Yeah.
Like, they don't give him
Well, no,
nothing.
I got distracted, because I actually want to talk about all of his kids and the 2 characters that actually had something to do and the 2 characters that didn't. But coming back on that, like, the son's last words before he died were, I want to go home. And that was like a recurring theme, that his kids didn't feel like they belonged in the water tribe and they wanted to go back to Pandora. So I figured surely they're going to take him back to Pandora. Like, the movie is going to end with them going back to Pandora. But it doesn't. It ends with them joining the water tribe. And I'm like, first of all, I guess Natiri's just cool with never seeing her mom again. Like, what? like, because her mom is in the early scene when they're back at Pandora. She's clearly still there. And, like, all of Natiri's friends and family that she grew up with are at Pandora. And she never wanted to come to this place in the first place. And the whole reason they came was to protect their family. But that didn't work because they found them. So it's like, why are you staying with the water people? Was that the goal? I thought you wanted to go back to Pandora. Like,
I don't know. I just don't get it. It's like, okay, one squad's after you. Okay, you have a whole army. Why don't you just stay at your fortress?
Yeah, stay and fight. And she's literally, and that's literally what Natiri wants to do. She's like, we should stay and fight and protect our people. He's like, no, we have to leave. And he spends his whole movie like, no, we can't fight. We have to leave. And then finally, at the end of the movie, his whole journey, his whole arc is basically, I can't save my family by running. I gotta fight. Like, oh, you mean the way your wife was telling you to do this whole time? Too bad you realized that after you made her leave her whole family and culture.
Too bad we waited 3 hours for you to realize that.
And also, your son is fucking dead. Also, what the hell did they do to Natiri? Oh my god. She has been reduced to basically nothing. Not that she was, a super interesting character before, but, like, they have her do basically nothing except be a mom and be worried about stuff. And then Jake is literally, apparently, the only one in the whole, like, talk about a white savior film. Jake is literally the only person in both tribes who, like, cares and, like, understands what war is and, like, is willing to, because, like, apparently the water people are pacifist, except when they're not, because there's this whole subplot. So again, his other son, the one that actually has some kind of story going on, his other son's whole thing is that, like, he's jealous because his older son seems to know what to do more than he does, and his dad seems to like his older son more, and he's just kind of the family fuck up. Of course, the only way that they display this is by repeatedly showing him do stupid ass things that almost get them all killed. So when his dad is like mad at him, you don't feel like, oh, what a poor misunderstood kid. You feel like, no, I'd be mad at you too. Like, what the fuck?
His fuck ups were so dumb. His first fuck up was like, ooh, guns. I want to pick up guns.
In the middle of a war. Like, it wasn't like a training. It was like they were being attacked. And then he shows up and starts like trying to shoot, and it disobeys direct orders, and then his brother has to jump in to save him, and he almost gets killed. And then his dad starts yelling at him like, what the fuck was that? And
then he does the same as
he does the same thing multiple times. So, but his whole arc is like, people don't like me. I'm the outcast or whatever. I'm the weirdo. And so is his daughter, his adopted daughter, who's like the virgin birth of the Sigourney Weaver scientist, played by Sigourney Weaver still, which I don't understand. Sigourney Weaver played that girl.
Yeah.
And I'm just like, why? Why did it have to be her? They were like, yeah, why doesn't Sigourney Weaver play her own teenage daughter? Like, why? There's no reason for that whatsoever. Like, she sounds like a grown-ass woman because she is. Like, why? Why? Why do you have Sigourney Weaver playing this 15-year-old girl? There's zero reason for this to be happening.
Yeah. There isn't. There is zero reason for that.
Like, all the other kids are played by kids or young adults, but like, then it's like Sigourney Weaver, what? She's like 60 years old. Yeah, she'll make a great 15-year-old girl. Like, what the fuck?
What are you thinking? If you just want her back, just bring back her character.
Yes, apparently you can bring back whoever character you want, so just bring her back with a clone or some shit.
No, she's still alive. Remember, she's in that tank.
Oh yeah, she's alive, but she's not conscious. Because she's And then she got pregnant, which is a very weird thing. Because at the beginning they're like, we adopted this girl because the scientist, she got pregnant. No one understands how, and I'm like, and they even make a joke about it later. They're like, who do you think knocked her up, lol? And I'm like, they don't know who her father is, and so she has this whole like journey of self-discovery, except it never reaches any kind of conclusion. Presumably because that's going to be for the next movie. But she spends the whole movie like, when will my reflection show? She's like, I don't know who I am, and people don't like me. They treat me like a weirdo, which first of all doesn't even make any sense. Like, she says that she hears Aya's voice or whatever, and she feels connected to Aya. And she's like, I know you think I'm crazy. Everyone thinks I'm crazy. I'm like, why would anyone think you're crazy? Isn't the Navi's whole thing that they're all super close to Aya? Like, isn't that part of their whole, like, religion and spiritual connection to Awa or whatever it is?
Yeah, I just don't understand. Like, they call her weird.
Yeah,
laying in the grass and listening to the art. How is that weird?
No, she doesn't seem any weirder than any of the other characters, because they never really explained why in this universe that behavior will be considered weird. Like, in a universe where everybody fucks with their hair and connects their hair to special things on animals to ride them. Or trees. And they connect to trees and start vividly hallucinating. I'm like, if that's a thing that people can do, you're going to have to explain to me why I should consider this weird. Her siblings are struggling to swim hold their breath underwater to do free diving. But she can do it really easily. And at one point, she connects to this heart tree or whatever, and then she has a seizure. And first she has a vision of her mom, and she asks her mom who her father is, but before her mom can answer, she like starts having a seizure. And so they pull her up or whatever, and then the military doctors show up on a fucking spaceship, which, as a reminder, Jake and his family are ostensibly trying to hide out on this remote island of like water Navi. So I'm sure the best thing to do if you're trying to stay under the radar of the U.S. government is to have a giant fucking spaceship fly to your location. So, a spaceship that probably has trackers on it from the U.S. government because it's a government ship. Mm-hmm. And so immediately the bad guy finds them because they do that, which is so stupid. And it doesn't even end up having a point because the guys don't do anything. The doctors show up and they're like, yep, that sure was a seizure. And they don't do anything. And then the chieftain's wife shows up and she starts doing some kind of sacred magic or whatever instead. And that's what brings her back into consciousness. So it's like, wow, I'm glad these people were here for no reason other than to get you immediately captured. And also, the one thing that those doctors say is, she's got a frontal lobe epilepsy, and that's why she's hallucinating talking to Awa. And if she has another seizure underwater, she could die. And that's treated like a dun 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 moment, and then it's never mentioned again. It never comes up again. At that point, silly me having faith that this would lead somewhere. I thought like, oh, okay, well, surely there's going to be another situation where either they're going to be in danger, and so she connects to the heart tree regardless of the risk to her life and has another vision, or we're going to have some explanation for like why that happened. Nope. She never has another seizure. We never understand why she had the first seizure. She never, I think she maybe does connect to the heart tree once, but it's like not narratively important, and there's no tension. It's not like they're like, oh no, but if you do it, it could kill you. Like, I mean, again, having watched a movie before, it really seemed like they were laying out the groundwork. Like my brain, I know how tropes work, and my brain is immediately thinking, okay, so they've established something that we as an audience are surely supposed to latch onto. Like the doctor said, if she connects to the tree again, she could have another seizure and she could die. Okay, so I'm thinking, all right, so then the stage has been set. So later in the movie, there's going to be a situation where she has to connect to the heart tree, but there's tension because, oh no, what if she dies? Because the doctor said that she could die if she did it again. But it doesn't come up again. Nope. It's like, what was the point of having that scene? What was the point of them going out of their way to be like, this is a thing, like this is why this is dangerous, but then it never comes up again, so I guess it wasn't a big deal.
I cannot express how much in a 3-hour and 15-minute movie I do not care about a single one of these characters. I do not care about anything about these sons or daughters.
No, the son that finally died, I don't even remember his name, and he was so irrelevant. I was like, okay.
Like, they gave that son who died nothing. Like, he had nothing to do in the movie.
He had no motivation, he had no characterization, he had no love interest, he had no, like, wants or needs or desires. He was just the good son.
The only thing he did in the movie was, hey, idiot son, stop being an idiot.
Yeah.
Stop being dumb. That's all he did in the movie. And he constantly was like, okay, come on, I saved you from kidnap number 47.
Yeah, because
let's leave
all the fucking time. He saves his dumbass brother multiple times. Oh, that's how he ends up dying. And I'm just like, okay.
And that was your fault. I don't feel nothing for you. I'm like, oh, boo-hoo, you lost your brother. That was your fault.
And then literally, that exact same moment, like his dad is like, hey, you stay here and don't do anything else because you already fucked up and got your brother killed. And then 2 seconds later, he just does it anyway. Like, the amount of times that they had his father order him to stay just for him to not listen 2 seconds later. Like, what's even the point? Like, he's just not smart. Yes. He does dumb, shitty things that put everybody in danger. Also, why do they keep bringing the daughter with them on these fucking adventures?
I don't.
Like, they keep bringing because they also have a youngest named Took, and she's cute, but, like, useless. And and they keep dragging their younger sister, who's, like, 7 years old, on these terribly dangerous misadventures, and she gets kidnapped every single time. There's a moment where she literally lampshades it. They get, like, the most infuriating scene by far was the one where they were tied up, and then they got out, and then they got tied up again within the same fucking scene. And Took, the little one, is like, I can't believe I'm tied up again. And I'm like, yeah, me neither. This is fucking ridiculous.
They got kidnapped 3 times in this movie. In the same movie.
It was like musical chairs. It was like they were taking turns getting kidnapped and then rescuing each other, and then the other one got kidnapped, and then the other one is like constantly. There's 5 fucking kids in this movie, and their whole purpose is to be kidnapped repeatedly.
And I can't get over every time the general is like, Jake, what do you want to do?
Yeah.
Jake,
what
like, do you want to do?
I'm going to kill your kid if you don't come to me, or whatever. And it's like, what is the point? And then also...
Dude, this is your 3rd time doing this.
And there were also
the movie.
And the ship was actively sinking. And there are also multiple references to, like, other movies. Like, that scene was very much like the Titanic, which Cameron also directed, where, like, the ship is sinking and they're holding on to wreckage and stuff like that. And then also... the Free Willy. There's like a Free Willy thing. One of the only characters that's actually interesting is this fucking whale character, and he forms a spirit bond with like the dumb kid, the dumb son, and they're like, well, you're an outcast just like me. And again, I'm like, you're only an outcast because you're fucking stupid. and apparently they can communicate through like this water sign language or something. And so the whale can talk, but like with whale sounds, but they understand each other. And the whale has one fin. He like broke his fin or whatever. There's a scene where he literally jumps out of the water and it's like Free Willy. It's literally like the poster for Free Willy. And there's one where they're like, why is this fish? He's outcast. He's dangerous. He's a dangerous fish. He kills people. He's so dangerous. And then he's like, so then the kid's like, no, he's got to be a good fish because he saved my life that one time. So then he goes back to talk to the fish, and he's like, "Why are you an outcast?" And eventually they connect with the soul branch. Which, first of all, if they fuck by connecting their hair, but they also dedicate babies by connecting their hair, and they also ride animals by connecting their hair, what the fuck does that mean?
I don't know.
It reminds me of fusion in Steven Universe. It's such a mixed metaphor. Sometimes it's sex, but sometimes it's other things.
Yeah. They just connect their hair to everything.
The fish or whatever, the big whale, is outcast, and they find out he's outcast because I guess some of the sky people had shown up and attacked the water people, and they killed some of the whales, and so he rounded up some other whales to fight against them, but they got them all killed because they were killed by the sky people or whatever.
Yeah.
And so then he was outcast because according to their ways he's a killer, and killing of all kinds regardless of motivation or reason is forbidden in the Waterlands, which is baffling because A, it doesn't make any sense that you wouldn't kill when you were being directly attacked. B, later in the movie they're very willing to kill, and I don't know. And C, they also hunt. They talk about going out to hunt. So I'm like, well, I mean, if you don't kill, hunting is killing. What are you talking about? It doesn't make any sense that he's outcast. And what's wild is that later on in the movie, because they have the water people have this spiritual connection to these whales, and they can all talk to each other and stuff like that, and they consider themselves spirit siblings. So then the chieftain's wife, she's spirit sisters with one of the whales, and she just had a baby calf, a baby whale. And so then the mama whale gets killed by these hunters in the most agonizingly long and boring, non-climactic hunting scene I've ever seen, where this fucking annoying Australian dude is hunting it down or whatever, and they shoot balloons into her fins and stuff.
It was dragged on forever.
It was so dragged. It was so now we're gonna shoot balloon number 1, and now we're gonna let it float, and now we're gonna shoot a second balloon, and now we're gonna shoot an explosive arrow. She's still alive. Now she's not. She's dead. Her baby. I missed when the baby died. When did they kill the baby? I didn't even see that happen. The baby was trying to swim and wake her up because he didn't realize she was dead. But I never saw them actually kill the baby. But then later they showed everything. They killed her and her calf, and I'm like, when did the calf die? When did that even happen?
I didn't even see the calf die.
No, and the whole reason that they killed her apparently was to draw the Na'vi out because they specifically wanted Jake. So first they're going from village to village and beating and torturing the villagers and setting their houses on fire. And then the chief talks to Jake and he's like, they're coming for you, but the people have not told them where you are by my command. And I'm like, it seems like you should be a little bit more frustrated that your people are being actively brutalized for Jake.
Yeah.
And so then Jake finally I got to go and talk to them or whatever. And so he draws them out by killing the fish. And he's like, no, we can't go out because it's a trap. But then the rest of the water Na'vi are we got to go and have revenge because they killed our whale friend. And I'm like, I'm sorry. So if they kill a whale, it's time for war. But if a whale kills them in retaliation, it's time to outcast the whale because killing is bad? What?
Well, it doesn't make any sense.
The whale didn't do anything wrong. He was just defending himself.
No.
So then the water princess or whatever, she has a conversation with the annoying kid because apparently they're in love or something. And she's like, by our ways, he is a killer. That is why he is forbidden or whatever. And he's like, but he knows what he did was wrong. He would never do it again. And I'm like, I mean, he should do it again. Killing your oppressors is not wrong.
That's what you're going to do later in the movie.
Yeah, he didn't do anything wrong, and he didn't do anything different than what everybody else does later in the film. So,
yeah.
And then, they even had this conversation, I guess the whales don't fight back. He's like, the whales never lift a finger against us, but they're tough to kill, because I guess the whales also have this never kill anybody ever philosophy, which again is fucking stupid.
Yes.
It's so weird. The motivations of these characters and the messages they have are just what am I meant to make of this? Jake's running away is they'll kill everything. If we enter into a war, it'll be nothing but suffering. But then later at the end of the movie, he's like, we can't run away. We have to fight, which is literally what his wife said from the very fucking beginning. So if I were her, I'd feel some type of way because, like I said, they end up staying with the water people, and I'd be like, you made me leave my home and family because you didn't want to fight, and now suddenly you're like, we should fight. The women are always right but never listened to because the chieftain's wife of the water tribe is also like, we should not let these people stay with us because it's going to bring a bunch of their fucked up shit to our land. And he doesn't listen to her, and then she's exactly right because that's exactly what happened.
Yes! Yes! And Jake's like, oh, I'm worried about her. I'm like, you should be worried about her. She's the only one making sense in this movie.
Like, no, if we bring these people who are being actively chased by a very violent military, we could find ourselves the target of this violent military. And his husband is like, nah. And then that exact scenario is what happens. Yeah, so Loak is the one that like is constantly in trouble. So he's the other one who has kind of an arc, but even then his arc doesn't make any sense because it's just like he didn't really learn anything.
No one learned anything.
I don't think anyone learned or changed all that much.
Like, okay, we started out with the beginning of the movie with the military dude hunting them. We end with the movie with the military dude living and hunting them.
And also, speaking of the military dude, so his relationship with Spider is bizarre.
Yeah.
So it starts with Spider. So again, Spider is apparently the biological son of the Colonel. We don't know who his mom is. Apparently, that's in some kind of spin-off book that you have to read. And so he gets captured during the first attack where the military people, because again, the stupid sons go out to go hunting beyond where they were supposed to, and they end up getting captured by the military dude. And then Jake and Natari come to save them, but Spider gets captured. And so then they start torturing Spider to try to get information out of him about where Jake is, and but he doesn't break. And so then the Colonel makes them stop for a little bit, and then he says, let me just talk to him one-on-one. So he talks to them, and so then the military's like, he's not your son! And I'm like, I don't know why she bothered to say that, but okay. And so then they have a conversation while he's in prison or whatever, and he's like, hey, why don't you just come along and hang out with me? You don't have to tell me where Jake is, but you can just I'll just, keep you with me when we go back to Pandora, because it's either that or be tortured again. So he agrees to go with them or whatever, but he's still, kind of hostile, which understandably, he's being kidnapped. Okay, fine. And so then they go back onto the planet, and then he him teaches him some Navi so that he can communicate. And he's like, we gotta act more like Navi. After the first time when they got immediately fought back, they're like, maybe we should stop stomping around in army boots with giant fucking guns, and maybe we should start acting more like Navi in order to track them and blend in. And so they try to take over those flying dinosaur thingies, and the kid kind of teaches them how to mount one or whatever, and they have this weird bonding moment where they're riding together and learning how to ride it. So there's this moment where he struggles to rein in the dinosaur thing, and he falls off the cliff, and so the Spider's kind of following to see what happens, and then he ends up successfully bonding with the creature, and he triumphantly comes up the thing or whatever, and Spider kind of smiles well, I'll be damned. And I'm just like, why are you why? It's he's proud of him, and I'm just like, why?
Yeah, I just don't understand. Why is he proud of him? Yeah, I'm so glad you learned how to fly that winged creature to kill that family I'm trying to protect.
Exactly.
I'm so glad.
Their whole interaction is kind of how a movie, if you're watching one of those movies where a big tough guy like Vin Diesel or The Rock has to take care of a little kid, and so it's he's not exactly a cruel, evil person, but he's just very gruff and doesn't know how to deal with kids, and then slowly they kind of form a bond. But that's remember that one where Vin Diesel's a babysitter or whatever,
yeah.
And but that's funny because it's a big tough guy learns to be nice to kids, but it's not an evil villain trying to kill a whole family learns to bond with some random rogue Tarzan kid that's technically his son. What? I'm not rooting for the villain. This guy is trying to kill Jake's family. I think we're supposed to be against that. So why are they having these scenes where there's an endearing moment between him and the kid? And then later in the climax, Natiri, and she fights him, whatever, and then she threatens to kill Spider if he doesn't let Kiri go, if the Colonel doesn't let Kiri go, because now the Colonel has Kiri. And so then she cuts Spider's throat, but not enough to kill him, just enough to make him bleed, I guess. And then, because at first then the Colonel's I don't care, he's not really my kid. But then he's like, no, don't kill him. And I'm what? Since when do you like him? When did that happen? And so then, after they fight, and then the Colonel and Jake are fighting, and they go underwater, and the Colonel and Jake fight, and then Jake strangles him or something, and they and makes him go into the water, and then Spider decides to go under and save him for reasons that are absolutely beyond my comprehension. I don't know why he saved him. I don't know why he saved him, and I also don't even know how he was still alive, because Loak goes to save Jake, and Jake is almost dead. Like, Jake literally is very, very close to drowning, and then Loak manages to save him. Meanwhile, the Colonel was deeper and underwater for longer, and also Jake, like, strangled him, and he's still somehow alive,
Yep.
and Spider manages to pull him out of the water, and then he just puts him on one of the like, dinosaur things, and he's like, son, come with me, and he's like, fuck you, and then he leaves. And then that's the end. I'm like, why did that even happen? And it's not like it ever comes up again. And it's not like he goes and warns Jake, like, hey, by the way, you know that guy that you killed because he was trying to kill your family? I saved him, so good luck with that.
I just don't get it. Like, why? Why did Spider all of a sudden get this attachment to the General? Like, the General has been nothing but of a
He's been
asshole.
hostile, and also they haven't even known each other for very long. I don't think very much time has passed.
I could count on my hands about 20 times he has told this kid in this movie alone, hey, dumbass, get in the brig, or something.
Yeah.
Dumbass, get in the brig.
No, they're not. I mean, they're not nice to. Also, the kid says dumbass and bro. That's like 90% of his dialogue. This dialogue is not like, you can tell James Cameron has never met any actual teenage children. He's like, yeah, kids. You know how kids are. They say bro and dumbass and butthole. Yeah. Like, what was that about? He's like, I don't speak English to buttholes. Why not say asshole at this point? You think a 14-year-old boy wouldn't know asshole or wouldn't say asshole? Yeah.
I just can't explain. Like, there was a 3-year-old girl sitting next to me.
Which, first of all, rip to that child. Yeah. Because, like, why would you bring a 3-year-old to this movie?
I don't understand.
Like, she wants to be watching Bluey, not this garbage.
Like, the only time when I saw her enjoying it at all was because we were watching in 3D, was the fish popping out on the screen.
Yeah, she reached out to try to fix the fishy.
That's the only other time I saw her enjoying the movie.
And then she fucking fell asleep.
And then I looked over, and it was like near the finale and stuff, and she was past the hell out.
Yeah, first of all, it was almost 11 p.m. at that point. Yes. And also, like, again, why would you bring a child to such a late showing of the movie?
It was so funny. The credits were rolling, and her sister was like, come on, we have to go home. She's like, oh, Jesus, is it finally over? Because I don't blame her. I know, because what are you supposed to get out of this movie when you're 3 years old? You're not getting comedy. You're not getting a good story. You're not getting anything. The only thing you're getting is
a couple of pretty visuals, which is all the movie has going for it. It's visually impressive. And honestly, I don't even think it's as visually impressive as some people are acting like it is. I mean, like, it's fine, it's pretty, but, like, I don't know, I feel like I've seen pretty movies. Like, I'll be honest, the scene, like, yes, was the CGI on this movie technically probably better than the underwater scenes in Wakanda Forever?
Yeah.
Probably, but I liked the scenes in Wakanda Forever way better. Like, that scene where, like, where the prince is showing Shuri, like, the underwater city, and that beautiful music is playing, and she's, like, swimming through the water. It's so much more magical. You can feel just how, like, real it feels. Like, it's not that the CGI is necessarily the best CGI ever, but it feels like a real movie. Like, I care about Shuri, I care about these characters, and so when Shuri has emotions, it's not just some random blank character like Kiri who just, like, looks wondrously, but I'm like, I don't know anything about this character, so I don't really care. I'm not feeling like I'm seeing it through her eyes. But when Shuri was going through and seeing all the people, I felt like I was seeing it through her eyes because she's an established character, and I understand who she is as a person and what her motivations are.
That's the problem. You do not care about any of these characters. I don't know how James Cameron successfully, in like 6 hours of a movie, for the first one and the second one, I do not care about a single one of these characters.
No, they're not interesting.
All.
There's
like,
no themes.
How do you make a 6-hour movie and I don't care about a single character? Not one.
No, not one. And even the ones that kind of had a personality before don't have one anymore.
Yes.
Like, Jake sure has a lot of lines, but I don't care about any of them.
No. I hate how many times Jake had to give narration to something that was obvious.
Yeah, so it's like, it's so pointless. Like, this movie, you spend so much money and you can't visually explain the story without having to fucking narrate every second. And, like, with the, like I said, when I say that my favorite character, the character I was most invested in this film, is the rogue whale, I mean that. The rogue whale had more of a character arc and story than like any of the human characters, any of the Na'vi. Like, he was the only character who like had a sort of beginning, middle, and end to his story, who had motivation, who you were actually rooting for when he came on screen. Like, you know, like you actually felt sort of bad for him when he talked about being sad that all his family was dead. Literally, the fucking whale had more character development than anybody else in this movie.
I don't think James Cameron can write. I'll be honest. Like,
and exactly, I think it's because the whale doesn't actually say anything. It's
Yes.
just communicated with
Yeah.
with subtitles.
Yeah.
Because he had and he like looked genuinely sad, and like he just was so much more interesting than all these characters. It's perfect. Like, you can have a character say a bunch of stuff but actually say nothing.
yeah.
Like, this is truly the only fucking character I care about. It's a goddamn whale.
Thank you, whale.
Yeah, I was glad he didn't die. Like, that was the only death that would have actually made me sad.
Because he has no reason to be outcast.
Also, can we talk about the dialogue in this movie?
Oh yeah, we can.
Oh, it was ass.
That's what I was trying to bring up. Like, James Cameron wrote these movies. He wrote the script for the first one and the second one.
At one point, to just sum up the dialogue in one sentence, at one point the bad guy says, "Why so blue?"
Blue.
Like it's a fucking Saturday morning cartoon. I'm like, is this Transformers? Is this My Little Pony? What am I watching right now?
Why
are you
so
looking
blue?
$500 million for Why So Blue?
I can't believe he said that. And talk about that marine biology scientist when they were on the boat hunting down this whale, and they finally got this whale.
Oh yeah, no. First of all, let's
Yeah.
talk about why they're hunting down the whale. So apparently, the new unobtainium, you know, that was a thing in the last movie.
Yeah.
Well, here instead of that, they're after whale brain juice. Now, this is something that you blink and you miss it because it only really comes up once. But they kill this whale, one of those spirit whale things, because apparently they're highly intelligent, and juice from their brain stops human aging.
Okay. What? Why would you tell us that? Are
That
you gonna
comes up once and never goes anywhere. But it's just like they're poaching the animal. And I noticed that there's one bit of the dialogue that very ham-fistedly tries to reference like how indigenous people live, but not in a way that's interesting or like necessary, because he's like, so we're gonna suck the brain juice out and then we sink it, and then Spider goes, "That's all? You don't even use the whole animal?" And I'm like that's clearly a reference to how, you know, a lot of indigenous cultures will use the whole animal to pay respect to its death. And I'm like, what? I mean, what is the point? Like, it's so on the nose. It's like he's making that observation. Like, the observation, the movie is like, you know, colonization bad, which, okay, yeah, thanks, James Cameron. I didn't realize that until you told me. But, like, they don't do anything with that. I'm like, I feel like we've seen so many movies this year alone that have dealt with, like, colonization, and some have done it well, like Wakanda Forever, and some have done it not very well, like Black Adam, and some have just barely done it at all. It's more, some feel like if you just looked up the dictionary definition of colonization and then read it out loud to somebody.
Yeah.
Like, I mean, like, with one scene in Wakanda Forever, I don't know why I'm keep comparing it to Wakanda Forever, I guess just because they both have sea people or whatever, but in one scene in Wakanda Forever, we see the damage that colonialism did to, like, Namor's home.
Yeah.
Where, like, the Spanish conquistadors were, like, you know, showing up and they're enslaving people, and they're, you know, all that kind of shit is happening. You can clearly see this is the specific impact that colonization has had on this man's people, and this is specifically why he wants revenge, and this is all this kind of stuff. In this movie, it's just like, yeah, colonization is bad, but it doesn't really have anything beyond that to say. It's just like, yeah, these cartoonish bad guys are doing bad. They don't even express a reason. It's not like, you know, oh, we're doing it for resources. I mean, they are doing it for resources, but it's never like, let's have a nuanced conversation about what drives these people to do these things. It's just like, we are bad guys, and so we do bad things.
You know what would be good? Like, they keep on saying Earth's dying. Could we see Earth die?
Yeah, could we see an example of that?
Like, any motivation for these humans?
Yes.
Why do they have to be the most generic villains?
Yes.
Ever
Like,
created?
imagine if you showed the Earth dying and you showed the impact that happens, and perhaps if you had the villain that isn't the same fucking villain from the last movie, maybe you showed, like, his daughter is dying of cancer or something back on Earth, so he's desperate to, like, find a livable solution.
Yes.
And so, like, now we care and we understand what his motivations are as a character. Now he's not just a mindless villain. He has a reason to exist. Like, Namor isn't just wanting to kill people because kill people. Like, he wants to protect his people. And is he going about it the right way? Probably not. But, like, you understand why he's doing the thing that he's doing.
Yeah, you don't get anything from these villains. Like, I can't believe he brought back this villain and did nothing with him.
I feel like that's all you even need to say. Like, for all the people who are insisting that this is such a great movie, I'm like, how can you defend that? How can you defend being so unoriginal that you just bring back the villain from the last movie?
And I was listening to your podcast before this. He's supposed to bring that villain back for multiple other movies.
Well, yeah, because he didn't end up dying.
Didn't die.
I'm like, I just don't understand how you can't come up with a second villain idea. Like, he's a guy who's in the military, and that's bad, I guess.
Like, even if he brought him back, could you make him interesting?
Yeah,
or do anything?
He's had 2 movies and 6 hours worth of footage to do something interesting, and he has yet to do so.
He's the most generic military dude I have ever seen in a movie. Ever. Like, it's...
Even this weird affection he apparently has for Spider comes out of nowhere and has no reason to be there. It's not because of he has no connection to this kid other than the memories. I mean, he's biologically the same as his father, and he has his father's memories, but his father died when the kid was a baby, so, like, he never even knew him. So, like, what are you doing?
That's why I'm surprised when his son was about to die, and he was like, oh, now I suddenly care.
Yeah.
Where does this come from?
Why do you care? It doesn't make any sense. The idea of Neytiri threatening Spider, someone who, has grown up alongside her kids and who she knows very well and has known since he was a baby, because she's just so mad with grief from having lost her son and doesn't want to lose her daughter. Like, that's the kind... I mean, it reminds me, only in concept does it remind me of, like, when the Red Wedding in Game of Thrones. When Catelyn is like, when they kill her son, and then Catelyn grabs, like, Frey's wife or whatever, who's just a young woman, she's like 15 years old, and threatens to kill her. And Frey's just like, I don't care, I'll get another, and she kills her. She didn't really have a reason to kill her. She's just so upset because her whole family just got murdered, and then she dies. And that's one of the most emotionally impactful scenes that's ever been filmed in the history of television, because it's like, we see a good person driven to do something simply terrible out of her, like, love and grief for her child. And that's kind of what they tried to do here, except I felt nothing, because I didn't care about the kid. I didn't care about the girl. I barely even saw her interact with that son. Like, it's giving nothing. It's like, you can put the concept in, but if you don't build the framework, it doesn't mean anything. You cannot just have Neytiri, like, threaten this kid and have me go, oh no, I can't believe that a good person like Neytiri is doing this awful thing without some context.
It doesn't help that she's not even a character in this movie.
No, not at all.
Like, she barely talks in this movie. Like, It's mostly Jake and his dumbass children. Yeah. That's it.
Basically. And she doesn't talk, and she gets in danger, like, multiple times, and then she almost dies, and then her daughter shows up to help her. In fact, it's really weird. In one of the climactic scenes, like, so the whole family is actively drowning, except for Kiri, who is just, blissfully swimming through the water, playing with, like, water fairies and stuff like that. Literally, they're intercutting scenes of her, like, whimsically swimming through the water and playing with, like, the water animals, and then they intercut that with her family actively drowning. And
God, I'm dying!
And I'm like, what am I supposed to make of this scene? Like, all I'm seeing is, like, girl, fucking, your family is dying! Go do something about it! What are you doing? And it's not like she didn't know they were in danger. No. Like, she escaped by jumping off the ship, and then she was like, well, I guess I'll just play around underwater for a little while my family is in grave danger. So then Jake and Toak and Loak are, like, trapped under, like, an air pocket and drowning, and then her Took and Neytiri are in another air pocket on another part of the ship, and they're also drowning. And so then she shows up. Also, there's these random butterfly fish that, like, help you breathe underwater if you, like, attach them to yourself. And so she, like, finds one of the butterfly fish and she attaches it, and then she finally decides to get off her ass and go swim and help her sister and her mom. She gives her mom the thing to help her breathe, which I don't really get. Like, I feel like if anybody, her sister probably needed it more. Yeah. She has smaller lungs. Yeah. And so she gives it to her mom, and then they just swim to safety. And then Loak gets his dad to learn how to breathe, and then they swim to safety, and then that's, like, it. I'm just like, what's the point of any of that?
I don't know. I don't know what the point of that. Maybe it was supposed to feel epic at the time. Like,
guess.
oh man,
And
she's
then-
controlling the fish.
And then they all end up like washed up on shore, and they're like, we all stick together. Meanwhile, Spider is like off saving his dad for no reason. Then he finally swims back and meets up with the family. They don't even seem to have wondered where he was. They're like, they didn't even care. He just shows back up, and they're like, and and the funny thing is, he shows back up, and then Jake hugs him along with Loak, and he says, a son for a son. And I guess that's meant to mean that he's adopted him, which I'm like, first of all, weren't you already basically family? And secondly, what the fuck does that even mean? What are you talking about? You didn't even care that he was gone for like an hour.
Yeah.
You didn't know if he was alive or dead. And also, are we gonna maybe address that your wife tried to kill him?
And are we gonna address that Spider did a dumbass decision?
No, we're not. We don't address that Spider freed his dad. We don't revisit like Natiri threatening his life. We don't revisit any of that. It's just like, you're my son now. What? And also, in that context, it's such a fucked up thing to say. Like, it's one thing if Natiri says a son for a son because she's threatening to kill your son in revenge for you killing her son. That at least makes sense. But then for Jake to go a son for a son, it kind of just sounds like, I'm glad I have this spare son. Like, my son died. Oh well, I'll replace him with this random white kid. I mean, in that context, it literally just feels like I've replaced your father killed my son, so I'm going to replace my son with your father's son, which is you. You're my son now.
He got really over his
He got over his son dying almost immediately.
Really.
Like, almost immediately.
Kiri was at least like crying and showing
Yeah, she
emotion.
was upset, and then he was like, stop feeling woman emotions. It's time to do stuff. He's like, hey, stop fucking crying because your son died. I need you to be strong.
I wanted her to tell Jake, shut up. Like, Jesus
This is literally all your fault.
Like, you wanted to go to this place, even though you knew the military people will be after us till the day we die. So why don't we stay with our family and fight them?
Which they seem to be doing fine. It's not like, I mean, the military literally says, like, he's managed to fight us, like, every single time that we've tried to escape. Initially going in, what I thought was going to happen is that their moving to the water people was temporary. And if they were going to use it so that they could, like, save up energy or, like, train to fight. Or I thought maybe he was going to have his wife and kids stay there for safety while he goes and fights the military guy. I didn't figure he was going to stay. I figured he was just trying to find a haven for his wife and kids, and then he was going to go handle things. But then neither of those things happened. He was just like, we just need to run away to the Water Kingdom, and we'll be safe, and then we'll learn. Also, there was like this weird tension with the Chief's kids, with the Water Chief's kids and their kids. So, like, first of all, and yeah, so the Water Chief's, he's got 2 sons and a daughter, and the daughter is like making eyes at Loak the whole time, and the 2 sons are like kind of mean and hostile to the kids because they were like weaker swimmers.
They made fun of them because they had shorter tails, because the underwater people have longer tails.
They have long, like, wide tails for swimming,
yeah.
And they just, they were like, you guys are forced, you don't know how to swim, all the while they're making fun of. And they also, like, started groping or grabbing the Kiri or whatever, like, really bullying her, and her brother showed up to beat them up to defend her, which, good for them, but, like, that whole scene is treated in a weird way, and then the kids, so then in retaliation for the brothers beating them up, they tricked Loak into going out beyond the reef and almost fucking dying because he's a dumbass.
I just don't understand. Like, that scene came right after another. Like, oh, now I almost physically assaulted your sister. Do you want to come on an adventure with us?
Yeah, and he's just like, okay, well, I'm not a pussy, so I'll do it. And then he, like, immediately almost fucking dies. And then the Water Chief is like, you shouldn't have done that. But then he, like, takes the blame, and so Loak takes the blame, and then now him and the other guys are friends because I guess he didn't let him get in trouble with his dad. Which, again, if you fucking left me to die, I would absolutely let you get in trouble with your dad. Fuck you.
You went to a place, there was a predator or something that was going to eat me alive. And you think we're all cool now?
Like, what? He's like, I know what it's like to be a disappointment. I'm like, again, what are you talking about?
Wow.
And you're a disappointment because you're fucking dumb. He's a disappointment because he attempted murder. Like, I guess he thought he was just playing a prank, but, like, he had to know it was fucking dangerous. And even his dad is like, you knew it was dangerous to go beyond the reef. Like, what the hell? And so that whole scene is so dumb and pointless. And also, let's just talk about, like, the yikes representation in this film. Like, first of all, I think he wrote these stories 10 years ago. To think, the hubris of thinking, I think he actually wrote it more than 10 years ago. And the hubris of thinking that a story you wrote that long ago is still, like, super culturally relevant and doesn't need any updates, especially when it was already super problematic that you're basing all of these cultures on, like, indigenous cultures. So, like, the Water Tribe is clearly based on, like, Polynesian people groups like the Maori. And so they have these, like, facial tattoos, and they have these, like, kaka-like movements they do when they want to go to war, like, stick their tongue out and stuff like that. But it's so tasteless, and most of the actors are white, that they're having act like Native Americans or act like, you know, Polynesians and that kind of stuff. And it's just so fucking cringe to, like, have, like, Kate fucking Winslet, the whitest woman who ever lived, white mixed with white, and have her be, like, the chieftain's wife and, like, make faces. It's just weird. And yeah, it's just super tasteless how he, like, fetishizes Native culture, but, like, doesn't actually respect it enough to, like, have the people, like, the guy who plays the Water Tribe chief is at least Maori, but, like, a lot of those characters are white. And it's just like, you know, it's okay to act like Native Americans or, like, have dreads and stuff like that, as long as we're pretending to be natives from space that are blue.
Yeah, I don't blame you. That's probably the reason why you hated Spider so much. Like, Jesus.
Yes. No, I did hate Spider. I mean, I hate him for a lot of reasons, but he's, like, super appropriative. And fun. The idea of this fucking half-naked white child running around in a loincloth and dreads just makes me irrationally angry.
Yeah.
It was just so long for so little to occur.
This has been a year of, like, no matter how much money you can put into a project, if you don't have a story, it does not matter. Because people said the same shit for the Lord of the Rings TV show. Lord of the Rings TV show, they spent upwards of $1 billion or something.
Yeah, something insane per episode. But the story was so boring.
What everyone said, the biggest problem with that show is the pacing. Mm-hmm. It's horrible. And that's the same way this Avatar movie is. Well, the pacing is horrible.
It's like people are, like, one thing that Hollywood is just fundamentally forgetting. I don't care if you have the coolest special effects in the world. If you have a shit story, it doesn't matter if you're playing to nostalgia. It doesn't matter if you have really cool effects. None of that matters. No. You have to have a good story. And cinema starts with a good story. Like, that's so fundamental.
I just don't get how all these writers and everything and directors forgot that, like, in the past couple years. Like, all we have to do is put a bunch of visual effects and it will cover up everything. And they also do that with these Marvel TV shows and stuff. Like, most of these Marvel TV shows, they would be much better off if they were just movies with simple plots, an hour and a half. Mm-hmm. That would be it. Like, for Falcon and Winter Soldier, that could have been an hour and a half a movie, and that'd be way better pace.
Mm-hmm. And some of the movies would do better as shows.
Yes.
Like, the Eternals would make a much better series.
Yeah.
Because you could spend each episode focusing on one of the characters, and then have them all join up at the end.
Yes. So, this year alone has shown that pacing and storytelling is what's important. And this movie is the definition of you have no pacing, a thin-ass story. Like, this is, like, the thinnest story. I don't even know what he's trying to say in this movie.
Yeah, it doesn't feel like it's trying to say anything.
Like, okay, capitalism is bad. We know that. Every single movie has said that, basically.
I mean, you have to do something with that. It's not just enough to be like, you know, colonization is bad. Like, yeah, glad we're in agreement, but what do you have to say about it?
Yeah, what do you have to say about it? Like, you can't just have 3 hours of a movie about that. You have to say something. Like, the visuals can't carry this movie alone. And I already hear people say, okay, Avatar 2 is the best movie ever this year and stuff like that.
No, I'm sorry. Anybody who unironically thinks this is the best movie that came out this year, like, you either need to watch more movies or, like, you're capping. Because there's just no way you think that. I'm sorry. I know it's mean. Like, it is just an opinion. But that, to me, just doesn't make any sense. Because this movie was so severely lacking in any kind of story. Which, to me, is so fundamental. Although I did see a quote-unquote movie critic this week talk about how, as long as the visuals gave you a sense of wonder, who cares about the story? Which is the stupidest thing I've ever heard.
It's the stupidest thing I ever heard. I hate that so much. That's what they said about the first one, too. Either way, I just can't explain. I think the same thing's going to happen to this movie. Everyone says it's the most amazing movie ever. And then 1 or 2 months later, once you get past the whole visuals and everything, they're going to look at the
story.
They're going to look at the story and realize, oh, there's nothing here. In fact, it's kind of like the same plot over again.
Yeah.
He goes to a different place. The military attacks him. He fights the military. That's exactly what happened in the first one. That's exactly what happened in the second one.
And we don't even have a reason for that to be happening. Because there's nothing inherently wrong with having a simple plot. But if you're going to have a simple plot, then your character work needs to be amazing. You need to have super compelling characters so that the simple plot feels like at least I care about what's going to happen. Like, what's going to happen with these characters. Like, if you're going to have a simple plot, then you need to spend a lot of time doing character work. You need to spend a lot of time getting me to, like, connect with these characters. If you don't do that, then what you have is a too long and boring movie. Because it's like, if I'm not watching this for the characters that I care about, and I'm not watching it for a compelling story, then what the hell am I watching it for?
Cool, you have cool visuals. So what? I don't care about that. I don't care that you spent $350 million having a bunch of rubber balls on a bunch of people while they're underwater, and they only film their scenes for probably like a month or two, and then the visual effects artists that are probably tearing their eyes out, spending 4 or 5 plus years per scene on things.
Yeah.
I watched a quiz about the first Avatar. It takes 48 hours to do 1 frame in the first Avatar movie.
To render it. It's to render it. And like I said, he had to wait for all of this tech to, like, catch up with his vision or whatever. And it's crazy because it's like, when it comes to, like, another thing about the visual effects, like, people talk about, like, okay, so the only redeeming thing is the visual effects. First of all, there are parts of the visual effects weren't even all that good. Several people have said that some of the visuals look like a video game cutscene. Yeah. Like, the frame rate is really weird. It's not even that good. Some of the visual effects aren't even that impressive. And also, in terms of, like I feel like when it comes to technical, like, prowess, if you do something cool enough visually that I know took a certain amount of work and effort and, like, skill and artistry, then I'm actually going to care to know how you did it. And I didn't give a fuck about how, like, I would not be interested in watching a making of documentary for Avatar. Compare that to, we just watched Del Toro's Pinocchio, which is on Netflix. And it was so good. The movie itself was like an hour and a half. We watched the movie and then we watched a half-hour behind-the-scenes documentary willingly and enjoyed every second of it because it was fascinating to see how they did it, how they did the stop motion, how they did the puppets, how they, like, built the sets and stuff like that. It was genuinely compelling and interesting. I was way more impressed with the visuals in Pinocchio than I was in this movie. Yeah. And I'm sure that the Pinocchio was only like $35 million. So obviously it's a lot more expensive what they did. And I'm not saying that computer generation isn't art. I'm not saying that, like, computer effects artists, like, don't deserve to be viewed as artists. Of course they do. But like, I don't care. To me, it's still a computer. Even if it takes talent and skill, you still have the benefit of being able to render and copy paste and do some things with computers that is different than being able to, like, hand move every puppet for, like, every single frame of work.
Well, the other thing, like, you brought up for Wakanda Forever, we're talking about the underwater scene and everything. You said, like, sure, the visuals in Wakanda Forever aren't as amazing as Avatar 2, but you care about the characters, and that's the same case with the Pinocchio movie. Yeah. That's the reason why you think the visuals are better, because you care about the story, you care about the characters, you care about what's happening. So it adds another layer than the visuals. If you have nothing but visuals, no character, no death, no nothing, I'm just watching a shiny turd. That's all I'm doing. It's nothing special. It's just there. It's just, okay, if you invite a friend over, they are never going to suggest, hey, let's watch the first Avatar movie or Avatar 2. No, they're going to suggest something that has visuals, that has a story, that has characters.
Somebody pointed out that, like, I forget what the book was, like Dostoevsky or something very random and obscure, has more fan fiction on Archive of Our Own, which is the primary fan fiction site, than the first Avatar. There is very little Avatar fan fiction because very few people care enough about the stories or characters to, like, write fanfics about them. Like, there, you can literally find random kid shows and, like, random shitty one-off, like, TV series and movies and stuff that have 10 times as much fan fiction as Avatar because people actually gave a fuck about those characters, even if they weren't super expensive or well-written projects.
And another thing I forgot to bring up in this article, but the main reason why Disney acquired Fox was for Avatar. Not for the X-Men characters, not for Alien, not for anything else they ever had. For Avatar. I don't understand.
And Disney has, like, an Avatar world. Their answer to the Harry Potter world in Universal was the Pandora world.
Yes.
Fun fact about that, you can watch Jenny Nicholson's video on it, but basically, so Disney originally was in talks to have Harry Potter world. They were going to license that from Rowling. But Rowling wanted a train to go backwards and do platform 9 3/4 and all this shit. And so Disney kind of waffled on that because they were like, I don't know, it doesn't sound good for crowd control, blah, blah, blah. And then Universal stepped right in and were like, hey, lady, we'll build you some trains. If you want some trains, we can build you some trains. And so she went over to Universal because they gave her more creative control. And Disney lost out on Harry Potter. And they were like, oh, fuck, we did not expect to do that. Because the Harry Potter world, for better or for worse, turned Universal into a household name.
Yeah.
Universal just used to be, a park that you might go to if you had extra time when you were going to Disney. But now people were going to Orlando specifically to go to Universal, whereas before, people would go to Orlando specifically to go to Disney World, and then maybe if they had an extra day, they would go to Universal. But, or you'd be like, my family went to Universal before we went to Disney because it was cheaper, and we could afford it.
And I just want to say something about the Harry Potter world. It is a lot better theme than anything I've seen in Disney in a while.
Really?
In Disney World, yes. I really enjoy those things, even though J.K. Rowling is a terrible person.
Yeah, she's awful.
But besides that, it just doesn't make any sense for them to be like, okay, we lost Harry Potter. Now let's go with Avatar.
Yeah.
Avatar has no fan base.
I know.
Nothing.
And you know what Judy said in her video, which I think is actually brilliant? You know what they could have done that would have allowed them to do, like, to build, like, a very immersive world and would have had a huge built-in fan base? They could have done Mario. There are several franchises, bless you, that are way more compelling than Avatar and have a built-in fan base. There's only a handful of super dedicated fans of Avatar. And to be fair, those people are super dedicated. Like, there's a very detailed wiki. There's a lot of world building that, like, only the most dedicated people know. You can learn to speak Na'vi. There's music in Na'vi. Like, there are things that the world building of Avatar is actually pretty good, but, like, very few people know about it because they don't care enough about the story to, like, look into the world building.
Yeah.
It's like, it's probably almost on par with, like, Lord of the Rings in terms of like, world building. There's a whole there's a whole language, there's a whole, like, structure. There's details in the wiki about, like, these instruments and, like, the history and culture of those instruments. There's a bunch of lore that's baked into the Pandora world that's on Disney now. So, like, there is lore, but again, you can have all the lore in the world if you don't have interesting characters. It's like if Lord of the Rings didn't have Gandalf or Bilbo or any of these, like, iconic characters, then nobody would care about the Silmarillion. Nobody would care that there's lore. You have to have characters that matter.
In the article that I printed out too, he did mention that he based these Avatar movies like Lord of the Rings. Like, he has to plan out the books first and then the movies.
But again, Lord of the Rings has interesting characters. Yes. Like, I mean, how can you miss that that's such a fundamental part of storytelling? It takes more than visuals. It takes more than conlangs. It takes more than world building. It takes some actual interesting fucking characters.
Like, he says, I wrote these books out and wrote all these scripts out for all 4 or 5 movies, so the characters know how they're supposed to act for the characters at the time.
But again, that doesn't go anywhere. I mean, it's like, again, not to bring up Rowling again, like, I don't, like, J.K. Rowling sucks, but she, for instance, gave Alan Rickman Snape's entire story before she was finished writing the books, so that he could act a certain way, so that when Snape makes his ultimate sacrifice and stuff, it has some impact, because people understand, like, because he knew when he was playing Snape where his story was going to go. But, like, she had a story written for the character. And it's like, and the thing is, if you want evidence of how, like, if you have interesting enough characters, people will forgive bad world building, or you don't have to spend as much time on world building. J.K. Rowling's world building sucks ass. Her world building is bad. She has one magic school for, like, all of Europe. When she was expanding into, like, the Fantastic Beasts franchise or whatever, she was like, there's one wizarding school in the entire United States. I'm like, that is stupid. You know how big the United States is? Like, there's so many world-breaking spells. Like, there's spells that can, like, reverse death, but only sort of sometimes, and then there's spells that you can, like, kill somebody with, but, like, you have to, like, it's like, I'm sorry, but if killing somebody was as easy as pointing your wand and saying Avada Kedavra, like, wouldn't murder rates be very high and the unsolved murder rate be high as shit? Because how do you tell if someone, I know that they're supposed to be unforgivable curses or whatever, but, like, can the Aurors immediately find out, like, trace, because everybody has a wand. It would be like if everybody had an AK-47 strapped to their back at all times. like there's plenty, or like whenever she like tries to expand, it's like the worst. Like, remember that thing on Twitter where she was like, they were like, where did the wizards used to go to the bathroom? And she was like, oh well, they used to shit their pants and then disappear the evidence with their wands. I was like, what are you talking about? So her world building is very bad, but people are still super dedicated to Harry Potter because they think the characters are interesting.
You can't do visuals. It can't be. You
have. It can't just be visuals. You have to do something else.
You have to do something else. It just. I'm just waiting for like a month or two when everyone realizes, oh yeah, that is the case. You have to have more than visuals. Why is he going to trick them? Like, I don't want to see Avatar 3, even if he makes it. I don't want to see Avatar 4. I don't care about Avatar. I barely want to see
this one. I only did it because somebody else bought the ticket.
Yeah. I thought maybe, okay, 13 years, maybe he thought of a better story. I don't care how many years you spent on the visual effects. I do not care. If you don't have a story, I do not care.
Well, for perspective, Guillermo del Toro spent about the same amount of time on Pinocchio. He spent like 15 years. But I actually care about the end product. So if you don't do a good end product, then who fucking cares if you spend a lot of time making it? So yeah, that's Avatar. And yeah, I think you. What would you rate this out of 10, babe?
A 0.
Like, 0?
I hate.
Damn.
This movie is like the most. I actually hate this movie. Like,
it makes you mad, like, on a fundamental level.
Yes. I just don't get how this is the number one movie ever. Like, number one movie that ever made money. I just do not get what came over people.
I think that what James Cameron has forgotten to account for, because he's super arrogant and stupid, is that, like, Avatar 1 only broke all that ground because it was an unexpectedly, because of the tech and stuff was so impressive. Like, people were all like, oh my god, the visuals, oh my god, woo, and that's why it made so much money. But the world is not 2019. We are, not in 2019, 2009. We're living in a much different world than we lived in 2009. It's a much different place with a much different landscape. There's just, like, it takes more than pretty visuals to, like, make a story sell these days. So, yeah, I don't think it's going to do as well as the last one. I don't think it's going to break any records. I don't think it's going to do any of that because it's just not good enough. And people want more than just a pretty picture.
It's also proven because they had a projection of this making 150 in the U.S., 150 million, and it only made 130 something. So clearly,
it's already under projecting.
Under-projecting.
Yeah.
Clearly, there's nothing to this. Like,
also, didn't Wakanda Forever make more on its opening
yeah,
weekend?
yeah, that did.
So yeah, take that, James Cameron. And you can bet that if it doesn't beat Wakanda Forever, he's gonna be like, "Oh, cinema's dead. It's all Marvel's fault." So anyway, that was Avatar, and we rated for half of the movie's runtime about how unimpressive it was. Aggressively mid. Save your $25 and just wait for it to come onto Disney Plus, so you can play it like it's a pretty screensaver background, because that's basically all it is.
Yeah, that's Avatar.
Yes.
2.
Thank you so much for listening. Make sure that you follow, like, subscribe, all that fine jazz. Make sure you also follow my other podcast, Close Encounters of the Blurred Kind, and our YouTube channel, our Twitch channel, and all of the other things that will be in the description.
Yes, thank you very much, and thank you for all the likes on the previous podcast too.
Yes.
Either way, talk to you later.